So welcome again, everybody. Just as we said before, so LEAP, what we're all about is basically just helping bridge the gap between high school students and their transition to university. And yeah, we just like to ease that transition and make it easier for everybody. So on our agenda today, we're going to be talking about the University of Waterloo and the University of Wilfrid Laurier. We'll go into our panel discussion, and at the end, we'll have a Q&A period. Feel free to drop your questions down in the chat box below if you have any of them just rolling throughout the webinar, or you can just wait till the end and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So first, let's introduce our panelists. Natasha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Chen. I'm an incoming second year accounting and financial management student at the University of Waterloo. So I just finished first year. Since I'm in a co-op program, my first co-op placement will be at Ernst & Young in Toronto in assurance this coming winter. I also like getting involved on campus in extracurriculars. So the first one I'm in is ACE Consulting Group. We're a pro bono consulting club under the School of Accounting and Finance. And I'm also an organizer on Hack the North, which is Canada's biggest hackathon held annually at the University of Waterloo. Additionally, I'm a School of Accounting and Finance at Reach Ambassador, so I hope to be able to answer a lot of your questions today.
Thanks, Natasha. Next, we have Owen. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Awesome, thank you. So hi everyone, my name is Owen Burry. I'm an incoming fourth year student studying political science with a specialization in public policy at Wilfrid Laurier University. I am the Associate Vice President of University Affairs at the Wilfrid Laurier Students' Union, so I do a lot of policy work, working with regional municipalities. I'm going to be a teaching assistant, so if you have any questions about what it's like to be on the other end of papers and tests, I'm happy to answer questions about that. I'm also the president and founder of Best Buddies Laurier and an oral advocate on Laurier's moot court team. I have a lot of interest in law. I'm actually studying for the LSAT and applying for law school this upcoming year. So if you have any questions about that, I am more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Owen. Nice to meet you. Next, we have Sam. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Sam. I am a double degree student studying computer science and business administration between University of Waterloo as well as Wilfrid Laurier University. So that's also a co-op program, and I just finished my co-op term, and I was working at Canada Post as a mobile developer. And extracurricular-wise, I'm involved in our Waterloo Undergraduate Student Society as well as Math Society.
Thank you, Sam. And last, we have Sarah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, me too. Hey, everyone. Nice to meet all of you. I am going into my third year of kinesiology at Waterloo, and I'm in the co-op program, so I'll be working my second co-op term this upcoming fall. And in that, I'm working as a research and operations administrative assistant at what we call CARE, so it's Clinical Research Center. And the way that I've mostly gotten involved at school is through part-time jobs. So that's how I've met a lot of my friends, and that's kind of the route that I chose rather than clubs and those types of things. So I'm a campus ambassador, I'm a social media coordinator for one of our accounts, just various part-time jobs like that. So super excited to answer all of your questions tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. Nice to meet you all. So just a little bit into our panel discussion, we'll talk a little bit about academics, experiences and internships in clubs at school, residence, and going into some financial aid. To start off, why did you choose Waterloo or Laurier University? Natasha, do you want to start us off?
Yes, of course. So I'm an aspiring CPA, and in order to become a CPA, you need 30 months of work experience. So I chose the University of Waterloo and the AFM program because as a co-op program, I get 16 out of the 30 months already in school. And I also get to work towards the Masters of Accounting program, which a lot of people from my program end up getting into. And the reason why you try to get into the AFM and then try to get into the MAC program is because that prepares you to get your CPA as you have to do the common final exam. And so all of that comes towards getting your CPA. So I found that this was like a very straightforward route, and it was a really easy way to get my CPA. I'm also very interested in entrepreneurship, and we have a lot of computer science students, a lot of innovation from these engineers as well. And so I find that it's really interesting to see all these startups come up from students at the University of Waterloo. And I've kind of involved myself in that way by pro bono consulting to all these startups as well. So that's why I chose Waterloo.
Thank you, Natasha. Sam, would you like to continue?
Yeah, of course. So everything Natasha said definitely is true. For me in particular, I chose the computer science and business double degree program is because it's the combination of these, I think, two degrees that are kind of competitive in the market for jobs. And also it's a really cool fit for what I aspire to be, which is product management. So it's really great, as well as a co-op experience. I think that's really makes University of Waterloo stands out from the other universities, is the hands-on experience you get from these co-op terms.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Sarah, what about you?
So I chose Waterloo because I really didn't know what I wanted to do after university when I was applying. So I figured if I chose a co-op program, that I could kind of dip my toe in a whole bunch of different waters and figure out what I kind of enjoyed. And I get that with co-op because I can apply to the jobs that interest me and see if that's something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And the other reason is our labs, especially in kinesiology. We're one of very few universities that has a cadaver lab that students are allowed to take part in their first year of university. A lot of schools do it in upper years, or it's like an elective class. So all first year kinesiology students get that incredible opportunity. So yeah, co-op and labs were definitely my reason for choosing Waterloo.
That sounds super cool. Owen, would you like to finish this up?
Of course, yeah. So my approach was a little bit different. I totally decided my school based on kind of the atmosphere. So I decided I wanted to go to Laurier because it had a combination of those really small class sizes along with the community atmosphere, which I thought was really important. I tend to thrive and do really well when I'm able to kind of create those one-on-one relationships with my professors, which I've only been able to do because I have those small class sizes, which isn't necessarily the case at all universities.
Awesome. Thank you all. Next, how is the social life, environment, and culture at Waterloo or Laurier University and in Waterloo in general? Do you find it to be kind of competitive, or is the campus diverse? What's your take? Sam, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's true that Waterloo students tend to be more academically driven and value the academic mission a bit more. So on the other hand, I think Wilfrid Laurier University definitely has more of a social life that you will see kind of in the movies. So for an example, you'll probably be looking at board games on the Waterloo side, whereas Laurier, you will be something typical of a freshman experience. So that's on the social side.
Thanks, Sam. Sarah, would you like to continue?
Sure. So a common stereotype that I think many of our panelists, as well as just students in general, would agree with is that people think that you have no fun at Waterloo. Kind of going off of what Sam said, that it's very academically focused. But I think the biggest thing for any student choosing any school, whether it's Laurier, Waterloo, or any other school in Ontario or Canada or wherever, is that university is what you make of it. So if you surround yourself with people that you will have fun with, then regardless of what school you go to, that's the environment that you'll put yourself into. So yeah, just there's tons and tons of clubs and different things like that. So find the people that are like your people, and you'll make university what you want it to be.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Owen, would you like to continue?
Yeah, no, I think Sam and Sarah said it both really well. Obviously, UW definitely has that stereotype of being heavily academically driven, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have any fun. I know a lot of people that go to UW and are involved a lot, and it's definitely what you make it. Obviously, Laurier has a reputation for being a little bit more social than other universities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people don't care about academics at Laurier. It's really what you make of your experience. If you want to go out, go to the bars and party all the time and let your academics slip, you're obviously going to be able to do so. But as long as you're driven and you're focused, I think you'll be fine. Something that's kind of in common between the two universities is the fact that Waterloo as a city has a lot going on. There's a really engaged community and really fun kind of downtown core. So if you get outside of your bubble, you meet a good group of people, you're definitely going to have a fun time.
Awesome. Thank you. Natasha, would you like to add anything?
No, I absolutely agree. I think Waterloo is like a really student-centered community. We have Laurier and Waterloo in the same region, so you'll see students everywhere. It's a really great environment.
Awesome. So next, what are the best parts about your campus life? Natasha, do you want to continue?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just really enjoyed campus. I think walking in during the first month of university, I was very surprised by the libraries. Like there at high school, I went to my local library, but nothing really prepared me for the university libraries. They have like very intense, like single desks around the library. Like it's like your own cubicle almost, and you can just walk in at any time. And during exam season, it's even open 24/7. So a lot of people camp there overnight. If you prefer to be more of a night owl, you can stay there until like 3, 4 a.m. and then you see the early birds trickling in at that time as well. So I really like being able to study on different parts of campus.
That's great. Sarah, what about you?
So kind of the way that I thought of my answer to this question is what places do I miss most about campus, since we haven't been able to be there for a while. So I love to be outside. So there's a courtyard outside of the Applied Health Sciences buildings, as well as in like the arts area of our campus. It's very, very big, but in the arts area of our campus, in the spring and summer term, warmer weather, they have these like Adirondack chairs that you can just hang out in. So around lunch hour, there's always a lot of people there sitting, just hanging out outside. So that's a place that I truly love, but I love to spend time outside. And if any of you are like me, there's definitely tons of places to just hang out in between classes or during lunch and things like that. So.
Awesome. Owen, what about you?
Yeah, something that's a little bit different between Laurier and UW is the fact that Laurier obviously has a much smaller campus. An awesome part of that is the fact that you can go from one end to the other end of campus in about 10 minutes. So when you're struggling to get from class A to class B, it makes it pretty easy. One other thing that's really awesome is the fact that we have a bunch of collaborative study spaces. So if you're someone who likes to work with other people, it's really awesome for that. We have a bunch of tables that you're able to study at. Obviously, it's a little bit different, at least for the first semester and potentially the second semester. But hopefully in your second year, you'll be able to experience that.
Awesome. Sam, do you have anything last to add?
No, I think they all said it really well, especially Natasha's point about the campus. So there's really not much, I think.
Awesome. So moving on to our next section, academics. What are some of the online platforms that you guys use for learning? So like where your class is situated, some of the apps that you use in your daily life. Natasha, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 3 online platforms at the University of Waterloo. The first one is Learn. So Learn is the default area where you'll access all your course content. You'll see your grades, submit quizzes, assignments, drop boxes. You'll see discussion forums, and sometimes you'll have like all your courses there. I think it might change for the fall term, but that's basically the default area. And you can see a lot of your important deadlines and your calendars. On Quest, I think a lot of you are familiar with this if you've gotten in to Waterloo already or applied. This is where you're going to be applying and filling out your admissions information form, also known as the AIF. But once you get into Waterloo, this is the place where you'll see your proof of enrollment, pay your tuition, and see your personal information and your schedule. Portal, on the other hand, it's a little less commonly used than Learn and Quest, but it's a website and an app that you can download to stay connected to campus life, see more of like a campus calendar for different events, have a map for different areas to eat or your classes, and you can even see the balance of your walk card if you're staying on campus or your meal plan.
Awesome. Thank you. Sam, would you like to elaborate on Laurier?
Yeah, of course. So for Laurier, I think with this online platform would be my learning space. So that would be where most of the where you will find most of the course content. And then for Laurier is what you would use for any course registration. And if you're a double degree, you will only have to register for your courses at your home school. So you don't need to worry about, well, most of the time you don't need to worry about the other platform not syncing with the other one.
Awesome. One thing to note is that most of these online platforms differ between schools, so that's just something to consider if you're not thinking of Waterloo or Laurier. You'll probably be dealing with different apps across schools. Next, do you guys want to briefly describe your program in terms of how it was and your difficulty and things that you liked about it? Sam, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, of course. I think someone in the chat also asked this question about balancing social life, so I can also touch on that here. So I think double degree would be relatively more academically rigorous because you are technically doing 2 bachelor degrees at once. And as well, it's more structured. So there's actually no electives until third year, and it's a 5-year program. So there is a pretty high dropout rate. So usually 50% of the entrants, like first year students, don't really make it until third year. But it's also really rewarding if you make it through. So I think social wise, you'll just have to make sure you have the work-life balance, and then it will be okay. It's definitely doable, but it's definitely more academic heavy.
Awesome. Sarah, would you like to continue?
Sure. So kind of going off of Sam, in my program, kinesiology, we have same thing. We don't get any electives until third year. So for some, that makes the first 2 years of our program very challenging. And I think this is kind of, for many programs, this is the case. You don't get too many electives until later on. But mostly I would say it's just because you don't get to choose the courses that you take. So chances are in your upper years, when you're picking these electives, you're picking courses that you're good at and that you're going to enjoy. So you're going to want to put in the effort and all those hours of studying. And with that being said, these first 2 years, it's also a lot of time spent in labs. So usually about 4 hours a week, compared to other students who would have those 4 hours to themselves for whatever they'd like to do, whether that's homework or whatever else, but just the nature of the program being science, we do spend a lot of time in labs. So just kind of takes away from your time for personal time, but it's obviously great hands-on experience.
Awesome. Owen, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think Sarah and Sam said it really well. It kind of depends on the program. I think I have a little bit more flexibility for my first 2 years. But in terms of difficulty, I think as you progress, especially my third year, I was able to kind of, going off of what Sarah said, pick classes and topics that I'm kind of interested in. So it made my third year much easier. First and second year were a little bit more challenging because it was taking me a little bit longer to adapt to the university style, which is obviously much different than what I was used to coming from high school. In terms of how many hours you spend in class versus studying, I was probably spending about 15 hours per week in class, and then about another 5-ish hours in different tutorials where you have that smaller class size, and then you would probably spend another about 15 hours, depending on what time of the year it is, either studying for an upcoming midterm or doing research for an upcoming paper.
Yeah, you can definitely see school is a full-time job, that 40 hours a week for sure. Natasha, what about you?
Yeah, so under the School of Accounting and Finance, it's actually pretty collaborative. So the School of Accounting and Finance encompasses my program, which is the Accounting and Financial Management program, but also other ones such as the Math CPA program or the Biotech CPA program. So we work in staff crews. Basically in first year, I was with a group of 6 people and I had most of my courses with them. I did all my assignments, all my presentations with them. And the reason why they do this is to mimic working in a team in the workplace. And so they change this from year to year. But that was very interesting in terms of the style of teaching and learning. The program itself, I think first year is pretty much an overview. If you've taken grade 12 accounting, grade 12 economics, finance, it's basically an overview, but they add on a lot of new content towards the middle, towards the end of the term. There's also a lot of networking involved and a lot of extracurriculars that are important to building your personal brand. So part of it is academics, but a lot of it is about building your brand, building what you're interested in order to market yourself in, when applying to co-op programs.
Awesome, thank you. So I know, Owen, you already touched upon this, but do any other panelists want to touch on approximately how many hours a week you spend studying? I know, Sam, you're in a double degree program, so do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely elaborate on that. So I think I would say because of our CS course at the very beginning has a lot of math foundation. So, and we're usually not used to the proof-based course. So you're probably gonna be looking at 30 hours a week. So weekends, I think it's definitely going to be quite a bit of studying because, and also you have to be prepared for a lot of the presentations on the Laurier side. That's not easy as well. So I think it's probably, that's 30 hours probably something you're looking at to do well, to really do well. Yeah.
For sure. It's definitely going to be very tough. Sarah, what about you, especially with your labs? Do you have to do anything in addition to that?
For sure, yeah. We don't write up. I think this is specific to Waterloo, not necessarily other kinesiology programs at other schools, but we don't write up full lab reports with all of the materials, procedures, all of that. We just answer it's mostly like the discussion piece of a lab report, just with questions that we answer. But that's definitely a lot of time. I would say to compare to Owen's amounts, we have probably closer to 30 hours of class a week, maybe more like 25. And then time spent like research, not doing research, sorry, like studying and all of that would be probably, yeah, I would agree with another 20. But an important thing to know is that like usually the first month of school is like lighter per se, versus as you get closer to the middle of the term and there's a lot of midterms, there's a lot more time that you spend studying. And then usually there's a bit of a like break from that. And then once you get close to exams, it picks up again. So I would say 20 is like an average, but sometimes it's more like 10 and other times it's probably more like 30, if not more than that, spent outside of class. So yeah, it just kind of depends on the time of term.
Yeah. Natasha, what about you?
I don't know an exact number, but let's say if I had around 15 to 20 hours of in-class time, my professors always tell us to spend another 2 times the amount of hours outside of class, so it would be studying, doing homework, working on presentations, and then maybe another 5 to 10 hours a week on extracurriculars, but it really depends on which curriculars you want to join and what emphasis you want to what emphasis you want to put on school versus extracurriculars.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So next, this may be specific to Waterloo students, but definitely both can touch upon it. Briefly describe your co-op program and what it's about. Waterloo and Laurier are definitely known for that. So Natasha, do you want to start us off?
Yep. So my program is the Accounting and Financial Management program, is a co-op program. So throughout my 5 years at Waterloo, I'll need to complete 4 co-op terms. So these co-op terms don't count as each of my 2 terms per year, but it's like an additional term. What this means is that I have to apply to different jobs throughout the term before, and sometimes if you're lucky, you can apply throughout the year before and get that job secured beforehand. But there's a set term usually that you have to be working. But sometimes that can vary on different programs. Other programs, it can be a little more flexible and you can choose to move your study and work terms around. In terms of the job search so far, I was lucky to be able to get my job search through a accounting conference a year before my co-op term. But for the typical student, everyone in my program so far has to do this program called the PD1 program. So it's a course called Professional Development, and we basically have to go through this entire module, do a lot of resume critiques, mock interviews. They give you tips on how to make yourself stand out. And so you have to submit resumes, submit cover letters to get them to grade how we would be applying to real jobs in the real world. So we do get a lot of support throughout the application process. And you'll probably be applying through Waterloo Works, which is a program that Waterloo sets up, which connects employers to students. But yeah, maybe Sam can talk a little bit more about how he got his.
Yeah, for sure. I think what Natasha said was excellent. And then on top of that, I think just something to clarify is that I got a fact that hit me like a brick was co-op program doesn't really guarantee that you have a co-op. So you also need to make sure you put in a lot of time to prepare yourself to stand out from other candidates. So I guess how to prepare for co-op program software wise, if you're going to something like software development, any software related, something to really look for is side projects, as well as any hackathon experience, because especially if it's your first co-op term, like not a lot of people have internship experience related to software development. So they really heavily look at what you have done on the side to really show that you demonstrate your interest. And then finding your first co-op, we are using for me, I use the Waterloo co-op platform. And then, so we have initially everyone gets 50 applications for the main round. And then when you get into continuous, if you get into continuous, you will have 200 applications. So if you can think about that, it's a lot of competition because everyone gets that many number of applications they can submit. And then as well, I think there's a question asked in the chat about the two different sides. If you're a Waterloo-based double degree student, then you'll be using the Waterloo Co-op platform. If you're on Laurier side, then you'll be using the Laurier Co-op platform. And if you're a double degree student on the Laurier side, you will have the first co-op term off. And then so number-wise, if you're in just computer science program at Waterloo with co-op, then you will have 6 co-op terms. And if you're double degree students at Waterloo, you will have 5. So I hope that clears up some of the questions in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. Would any other panelists like to elaborate on this? Nope, we're good. All right, moving on. Last thing for academics, do you have any advice on the application process and specifically maybe to Waterloo, the AIF? Sam, do you want to touch a little bit on this?
Yeah, I think for applying to computer science or CSBBA, I think something they require is the CCC, the senior CCC. The mark, I mean, usually people don't do that well because it gets pretty hard, the questions, but then they really want to see it just to see where you're at. And as well, something that really helps is the Euclid contest as well. So I'm pretty sure they required it for my year. So I think that would really help. And then someone asked for any internship experience. I think that would really help as well. If you have any related experience. And then you mentioned that on your AIF so that Waterloo knows that you're able to balance work and studying, which is like something at the core of Waterloo program. So I think that would help as well. Yeah, and then what they don't like is you taking online course because for a section they ask you whether this course is taken online, and if so, you have to explain. So yeah, just a side note for that one.
Good to know. Thank you. Owen, would you like to also elaborate just on the application process?
Sorry, you cut out. Could you just repeat that quickly for me?
Yeah. Do you want to just elaborate on a little bit of your application journey?
Yeah, so basically for the application process, my specific program, you don't automatically go into co-op. You're able to apply for a co-op position if you want. Again, like Sam said, it does tend to be rather competitive. So one thing that really helps is kind of boosting up your extracurriculars, showing people that you can set yourself aside. Obviously, a lot of those people that are applying for co-op are going to have very good marks. But those extracurriculars are really what set you aside and tend to spark the interest of employers.
Awesome, thank you. Sarah, what about you? Do you want to touch on your application process?
Yeah, so I actually didn't fill out the AIF because I kind of didn't really know that it existed, which was totally my bad. But I would highly recommend filling it out. I think we'll touch on this a little bit later, but it helps with scholarships and various things like that. So highly recommend that you fill it out. I would tell yourself that it's mandatory because it's super helpful for the university in terms of admissions, but also for, like I said, scholarships and things like that.
Awesome. Natasha, would you just like to finish us off about the application process?
Yeah, absolutely. So the AIF was mandatory for my program, as along with a survey. I believe it was 75 questions, mostly personality traits, and then I had to do a video interview. So I think that a video interview, they provide 3 questions or 2 questions beforehand, so you have a lot of time to prepare, but it's like a one-shot thing. So once you record it, they send it in, and that's what is included as a part of your application. They equally look at all of these components, so not just your grades, but they look at your extracurriculars, so you speak, and I guess that survey tells them something about yourself as well. So I guess advice for that is to be consistent with your answers to the survey, to just be yourself, be genuine, and practice your video interview questions beforehand, and make sure that you get the AIF done beforehand, so don't leave it to a last minute basis in case anything happens with the server. But yeah, best of luck with that.
Awesome. Those are some really useful tips. Thanks, guys. Moving on to experiences, internships, clubs, and extracurriculars. Briefly, would you guys like to talk about what clubs and sports you were involved in during your first year, and what extracurriculars you recommend joining, stuff that you found fun? Natasha, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recommend that if you're going to be in a School of Accounting and Finance program to look into the School of Accounting and Finance clubs. Some things include the Pro Bono Consulting Club that I was on, that I mentioned before. It's a really good experience to get real life experience before even graduating. So I've worked with startups and venture capital firms even in my first year, which I found very fulfilling. I also did play volleyball intramurals, which was really fun. I'm not really good at volleyball, but it was fun to join with a few of my teammates and to just bond during the evening. It's very fun, nothing formal, but it was definitely a really good experience. Some other clubs I joined included the Village One Residence Council. So on residence, I joined the Residence Council representing my building in creating monthly events towards everyone in my building. But I definitely recommend that even though some of your clubs may be within your program, to really venture outside of those and join other things and other faculties. And so I did that by joining Hack the North, which is mainly like a math/engineering faculty club. So a lot of people in the organization are in computer science or in engineering, but as an accounting and financial management student, I feel that I bring a different perspective to the table. So I definitely recommend that you reach out to different opportunities as well.
Awesome, thank you. Intramurals definitely tends to be well received among many universities, so that's definitely something you should check out. Sarah, what about you? Do you care to talk about your experiences?
Yeah, so I also did intramural volleyball, which is kind of funny, and it's super fun. There's different leagues for like your skill level, so my friends and I just play beginner. Like Natasha, I'm not very good, so we just play beginner, and it's super fun, and it's just like really friendly, even though you don't know the team that you're playing against. So I highly recommend intramurals of whatever your interest may be. And an extracurricular that I recommend joining if you're in kinesiology is volunteering in our anatomy lab. You can do dissections in the summer, and you can also volunteer as a teaching assistant during the year when the anatomy class is on. So highly recommend doing that for anyone in kinesiology or going into kinesiology. And you get that information in class of how you can sign up for that, so you don't even have to go out of your way to find how you can sign up for that. The prof tells you all about it. And another thing I would recommend doing is networking events. So we have one specifically for AHS, so they'll bring in alumni and various businesses in the area, and I believe they call it AHS Speed Networking. So it's one night that you get to go and talk to all of these alumni and professionals, and they tell you about their path, and it's super organic and they're super nice and they want to get to know you and talk to you. So I highly recommend attending things like that because it can be very intimidating, but once you get there, it's they're super welcoming and nice.
Awesome, thank you, Sarah. Owen, what about you?
Yeah, I really want to echo what Natasha said about kind of picking something and then the extracurriculars and the clubs that are obviously geared towards your program. So I participated, I did research for a professor, a teaching assistant position, and then I participated in Laurier moot courts, kind of hone my more career professional skills. But then I also participated in intramurals and kind of what I call like more fun club, being Best Buddies Laurier. So I could kind of meet people and have a good time. So it's really a matter of finding a proper balance between the two. Obviously, you want to make yourself stand out, so you want to get that career experience, but also make sure that you're doing something that you like that isn't necessarily related to school or your field. Just kind of give yourself a break.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's definitely good to discover other interests outside of your field. You might end up finding something that you like. What about you, Sam? Do you have anything that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think for double degree, you don't get that much extra time for extracurricular, but then for me, I was able to be a part of our WUSA as a business representative. So that's pretty cool. And then I think I was also able to do intramural for ultimate. And then so my friends and I made a team, and I think it's a great way to build community. And then also I would say the double degree I guess program is pretty tight knit compared to some other programs because you only have like so many people in there. So I think that's something to highlight for my extracurricular.
Definitely, thanks, guys. Next, do you guys know of any first-year research or internships opportunities available at your school? Natasha, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so for my program, co-op starts in the second year, but I was able to secure my co-op program through something called the Big Four Summer Conferences. So the Big Four accounting firms, I don't know if you know them, but Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, and Ernst & Young, they each run a conference around March of every year, and they hire around maybe 100 students per location. And this is you competing against any years, there are any universities, but it gives you a chance to put your resume, put your transcript, put your cover letter out there to these conferences and see if they want to give you a job offer the year before. And like, I definitely recommend it if you're going to a program or you want to work from the Big Four, because it puts off a lot of stress instead of like waiting until the term before and having to go through the application, the interview process while you're on a study term. So that's just how I got my internship. I don't have any research experience, unfortunately.
That's okay, definitely. Thank you. Sam, do you want to briefly touch on some of the opportunities you know available to students?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, of course, you have the Waterloo Co-op platform that's at your disposal. And then in addition to that, I went to some job fairs. I think those could be helpful if you look out for those. I think they might be virtual now, but I think it's really helpful to just get your resume out there, and as well as resume critique sessions. So a lot of different clubs on campus, like Tech Plus, like a mentorship program or anything, like it's a lot of them have resume critique sessions. So I think I would really strongly suggest you take advantage of those, because some of the seniors have a lot of experience and they can really polish up your resume to make it more presentable to employers.
Awesome. Sarah, do you have any points you'd like to briefly address?
Yeah, so in terms of research, since that hasn't really been touched upon yet, there are many professors that are like 1000% willing to take students on as volunteers in their labs. They always need an extra hand or a few extra hands. So many of them, if you just find their email online and email them, or if you approach them in class or head on over to their office, if you express interest in a professional manner, they are happy to have you join them in their lab.
Awesome, thank you. Owen, would you also like to add on?
You know, I really want to echo what Sarah said. It's really important. I was really interested in research with a few of my professors, and that's why it's important to make sure that you're excelling in their class and that you're making the connection. I can't count on, or I can't tell you the number of people who go through their 4 years without even talking to their professors. But if you make that conscious effort, you go up to them at the end of class, you go to the office hours, you show that you're interested in what they're talking about, and you're doing well in that class, a lot of the time they're more than willing to take on some extra help with their research.
Definitely. I know, as mentioned in the first part of our webinar, don't be afraid to go and talk to your professors. It's totally normal and they're always there to help you. So definitely something to keep in mind. Now moving on to residence. So what was your residence experience like at Waterloo or Laurier? Natasha, do you want to start us off? Maybe just mention the residence building that you lived in and some pros and cons of living there.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I lived at Village 1, and as a School of Accounting and Finance student, I was in the Living Learning community. I'm not sure if a lot of you have heard about this, but Waterloo has a few clusters in the residences where you're basically living with people in your program or your faculty, depending on the program and faculty that you're in. So some of them they don't offer it for, but for most of them, if you search up, they'll probably have something to redirect you to. And the reason why I chose Village 1 is because of this Living Learning community. At night, I found it really helpful because maybe I was stressing to submit an assignment. I could just knock on my neighbor's door and say like, hey, can you help me with this question? And we'd also be struggling on the same assignment at the same time. So just like great to be there and be accountable for everyone so you don't miss a deadline, or you always have someone to give you notes for a lecture if you couldn't attend. And so that's like the reason why I went to Village 1. And something else to note is that Village 1 is a traditional residence. So basically you have communal washrooms, but you live with like maybe 15, 20 people on your floor, and you share like maybe like 2 or 3 washrooms. So that's how it works. But also I didn't have any kitchens to like cook my own food with. So it was a meal plan based type of situation. So I had a balance of my meal plan money, The balance that I paid up front, they took 50% of it off. And then every time I went to the cafeteria, they give me 50% off the things that I paid for. So it's a little bit complicated when you first think about it, but it turns out to be the same amount that you pay and the same amount that you get from the food if you do use all your money up. So yeah, that's my experience at Village One.
Thanks for that. Sam, would you like to continue? You're on mute, Sam.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, of course, I can share a bit about my residence experience. So I lived at Rev. I think it's mediocre at best. It's not the greatest, I think, facility-wise. So it's you also have a communal washroom, and then I think the upside is that it's double rooms and everyone lives so close together. I ended up being friends with everyone on my floor, so that was cool. And I was also on the residence council as well. So I think it's really how you make that experience. So what I would recommend if like you're really talking about facility-wise, Waterloo Place, MKB, and also I think V1 are some of the best residents out there. But then if you're like, especially like a double degree student, I wouldn't recommend Columbia Village because it's super, super far away from Laurier. And you're just gonna end up skipping all of your class if you live there. I know one of my friends did that, so I wouldn't recommend it. And then so for meal plan, I think, yeah, I would just recommend getting the cheapest meal plan because there's really no discount. So yeah, so I think that's really my residence experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Sarah, do you want to continue?
Yeah, so very different from Natasha and Sam's experiences. I lived at St. Jerome's University, so it's a university college. It sounds like it's a completely different thing, but it's totally affiliated with the university, as well as the other 3 university colleges. And I would say the biggest upside to these, and it's for some people, but not necessarily for everyone, is that it has this small community feel. My residence had a total of 250 people in it, I believe, versus the other residences, when you total up everybody that lived there, it's probably more like 500 or higher, if not. So it definitely has that small community feel. Like I could probably recognize every person who lived in my residence. And another major pro is that we have chocolate milk on tap, and who doesn't love chocolate milk? And then our meal plan is very different from the others. It's everything is included, all you can eat. So you will see a lot of athletes that live at St. Jerome's because it is all you can eat. And yeah, that was my experience. I really enjoyed living there. But like I said, that small community feel is not for everyone. Some people just want to shut themselves in their room at the end of the day, have that time to themselves, but others want to get that time to hang out with people in common areas and all of that. So definitely you would get that at the university colleges.
Yeah, totally. Owen, do you want to highlight your experience?
Yeah, for sure, Sarah. I'm definitely jealous of you. We did not have chocolate milk on tap, so that is definitely a big downside to Laurier. But I lived in Regina Towers, which I thought were some of the best residences at Laurier. I had my own, I lived in apartment style, so I had my own room, my own ensuite bathroom, and then the apartment was really nice, so you could kind of have your own space when you want to, but if you want to in the common area with your roommates, you were able to do that. In terms of meal plan, if you live in the dormitory style, you have the option to do a 5 or 7 day meal plan. There's a central dining hall, so you're able to go to that. If you live in the apartment style, you could do the same meal plan, or you could just get, I think it's $1,000 of flex dollars that you can spend at various places on campus. I personally did the full meal plan because I didn't want to be bothered with cooking, which was a little bit more expensive. But especially in that first year, I didn't want to be worrying about going to the grocery store, cooking my meals. I kind of wanted to have everything figured out, so that's why I ended up going with full meal plan.
Awesome, thanks you guys. And do you guys want to just briefly touch on transportation around campus? So Sarah, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, for sure. So Grand River Transit is like the transit in the area. So there are bus stops, and there's the brand new Ion Light Rail train that is, they have stops on campus, all around campus. There's actually one bus, it goes throughout the Waterloo region, but it actually makes a full loop of campus. So if you're going to be late for class, or if you're a little bit lazy, you can hop on that bus if the timing works out, and get yourself to the other side of campus. But definitely the buses and light rail train are super, super helpful, and it's paid for within your student fees. I'm not sure how it's working with online / in-person school, but before it was all paid for, so you just tap your student card and you don't have to worry about payment or anything like that. So super convenient, great way to get around campus as well as the Waterloo region.
Awesome. Owen, would you also like to add on to that?
Yeah, the Grand River Transit is really accessible, and it definitely covers the majority of the city. Obviously, if you need to go do groceries, the buses run pretty regularly. There have been a few times where I've hopped on the bus and taken a 3 or 4 minute bus ride up to campus because it's normally included in your fees. I don't know what UW is doing. I think it's the same as Laurier, but this year because of COVID, we're not going to be offering the normal bus pass that you pay for in your ancillary fees. You can purchase, I think it's about $300 a semester for an all-access pass, whereas I think it's normally $80. But normally you can just tap on, and it's covered through your fees, which is really convenient.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So moving on to our last topic, we've got financial aid. So what are some financial resources that you guys know both externally and internally at Waterloo and Laurier? Sarah, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of mentioned this before, but with your AIF, you make yourself eligible for a lot of scholarships. And that's just by filling out something that I know for Natasha's program, and I believe for Sam's as well, but for many programs at Waterloo, it's mandatory anyway. So it's kind of nice that you're doing something that's mandatory and they're already making you eligible for so many scholarships. But I would say I don't know of any specific resources. I probably would have 2 years ago on the internet that helped you to find all of these scholarships and how you can apply to them. But just search up scholarships for students 2020, and I know that tons of things will show up, and you'll be able to find something that suits you and that you like check the boxes for, and then you can hopefully get some money for free.
Awesome. Thanks. Owen, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, free money is always pretty great. So Laurier, like a bunch of other schools, they have entrance scholarships, and then they have what they call in-course scholarships. So if you have an 80 or above, 85 or above, whatever category you kind of fall in, you tend to get X amount of dollars. Obviously, it's going to vary from school to school, but every little bit kind of helps. And then Laurier has what they call a general profile, where you'll fill out specific things about yourself. And then if you qualify for a specific scholarship, we'll let you know. You'll apply for that. Normally, it's just writing a personal statement about why you think you should get that money. And then if you're successful, you're awarded that money.
Awesome. Thanks. So that reaches the end of our webinar. We'll now open for some questions. I'll just open up the chat here and we can just answer some of those questions. So I see a question here. What program at Waterloo is good for aspiring doctors, and is there a difference between health studies and biomedical studies? Does anybody want to take a snap at that question?
I can do that.
Go for it.
So health studies is under the Faculty of Applied Health Sciences, which also has kinesiology, rec and leisure. And the other one is escaping me right now, but it'll come to me. And then biomedical sciences is under the Faculty of Science. So you still get a Bachelor of Science with both of these degrees. I would say the biomedical science program gives you more freedom to choose what science courses you'd like to take. And it is not that it's more science focused, but just the first 2 years, I would say at least, are quite science focused. And then the health studies program focuses a lot more for the first 2 years on health systems and how health systems work. So I would say to best prepare you for medical school, you may want to take the biomedical sciences route. But if you're kind of on the fence about it, biomedical sciences does not have co-op. Versus health studies has the option to take co-op. So if you'd like to get that workplace experience and see if something is truly what you'd like to see yourself doing as your career, you may want to look more into health studies to see if that's what's more to your liking and try out those co-op jobs.
Awesome, thank you. So I see another question here about just some support systems for mental health and stress management at university. Does anybody want to cover those? Nobody? Okay.
I can hop in and
there we
speak
go.
More generally for sure. And then I can't speak specifically to Waterloo, but I can speak to the Waterloo region and then specifically to Laurier. So if we start with Laurier, you'll obviously have those different supports, whether they're offered by your student association. I think UW has some sort of support that's a part of their student fees with their student association. But they have different on-campus groups that you're able to be a part of and reach out to for resources. You'll also have the Health and Wellness Center at Laurier where you can talk to a counselor if that's something they need to go through. You're also able to talk to people in the Waterloo region. Normally it's very, very cheap, maybe $30 if you want to reach out for a session. A lot of the times they do offer free counseling or free resources if you need. So you definitely have those supports for time management, supporting their mental health. Those are all really big things. At Laurier, I know at Waterloo, and definitely in the Waterloo region as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Owen. There's another question about grade 11 marks and how that affects your application. Does anybody want to touch on that? They're probably asking specifically pertaining to like AIF. If you have to mention any of those things, does anybody know?
Yeah, so for grade 11 marks, I think for most programs, even if you're applying at early stage, they'll look at your previous year marks. So like if you do perform well in your grade 11 marks, then that's even a better reason to apply earlier because they'll look at those marks before your grade 12 marks. Sorry, does that answer the question?
I would think so, yeah. So
Okay.
yeah. There's a question about any tips or advice for efficient note-taking and studying, maybe during lectures or after that.
I can quickly hop in for that.
For sure.
One thing I found really beneficial is creating friends in class. I think my first day of school, obviously everyone's really nervous. I was nervous going in. I think I made buddies with the two people sitting beside me, and then they're two of my good friends now. So going forward, we take classes together. We share notes with each other, so everyone will take their own notes, and then we kind of collaborate and compile everything into one master document, just so you're not missing anything. So that's something I found really beneficial. Some people like doing kind of like a Google Doc style, where they'll share a Google Doc with 2 or 3 people, and some people will kind of take down what's on the slides, whereas other people will fill in what the professor is saying. So it's going to take a little while to figure out what works best for you, but there are definitely options for collaboration, and that's definitely what I would recommend doing.
Awesome. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate what Owen said, finding what works best for you, I think, is the most important thing. Like in first year, I always typed my notes. That's how I wrote every single note I ever took. And then I wasn't doing as well as I would like to. So then I would type my notes in class and I would handwrite them before a midterm or a test or anything like that, which ended up being very time consuming, but I learned that that was the best way for me to study and for me to learn the content. So it took me a full year to do that. So be patient with yourself and know that what you're trying is hopefully going to help you. And if it doesn't, try something new. So yeah, just find what works best for you and then you'll succeed.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. There's another question about just applying. What's the most surprising thing you learned after applying? And maybe we can just translate that into something surprising you learned when you started school. Does anybody want to take that question? If there's no answers, we'll move on to the next question. When do questions for the AIF come out and do they change every year?
I don't really know. I wasn't aware of the previous year's AIF questions, but I believe they stay approximately the same, probably not too many changes. And I don't think they came up beforehand. It was just when the AIF was open, then I just started to fill in my answers. So probably early in the maybe September, October, November, once you fill out your information on OUAC.
Awesome. There's a question about switching programs. Would anybody like to touch upon just what they know about switching programs? Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Sam.
sure, I can touch on that. So I know a lot of people, it's like stress, like, hey, what if I don't make it through, right? And then so I think what happens is most of the time, for double degree, whether you're Math BBA or CS BBA, you will drop to one of the sides. So for example, if you're Waterloo based, you will drop into CS BBA with co-op. But for example, if you're Laurier based CS BBA, and then if you drop to CS, then you will drop to CS without co-op. So that's something you want to look into. So usually they will drop you to a single degree for a double degree option. And then so the credits will transfer based on, there are a lot of overlapping courses and you can get those credits.
Awesome. Thank you. Would anybody else like to add on to that? No? Okay. I'm just looking through here. there was a question about ranking your choices for programs at Waterloo or Laurier. Do you know how the ranking system works for programs you're choosing? Anybody like to take a crack at that? Okay, then we'll move on to another question. Does anybody know if you don't get selected for your first choice as you enter first year, is it easier to change? Does it, like what translates over? What kind of courses translate over? Sam?
Well, I think I guess I can tackle that. So I think it's a lot easier to go in with a program that you want from high school than from uni, because especially with like CS courses, like it's different, it's difficult, and then to get the same mark in university is you're gonna have to put in probably more effort. So if you can try to get in straight the program that you want from high school, I think that would be the easiest route.
Definitely. There's another question about the rankings on OUAC. So does anybody know if Waterloo or Laurier cares about how you rank it in the OUAC system?
From Laurie's perspective, they don't really care.
Awesome. Does anybody want to speak to Waterloo? Sarah, yeah?
I could totally be wrong here, so maybe fact check me on our website, but I believe Waterloo doesn't care, but engineering, there's something weird that happens there with rankings, so check the website for that specific information.
Awesome. So just at our last question that we'll tackle tonight, do you guys know about any experiences from the Global Business and Digital Arts program and how internships work? Global Digital Arts. If not, do you want to speak to internships? Yeah, Natasha, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I don't know much about the internship program specifically in GDBA, but I know that there's like the Stratford campus. So after first year, all these students go to like a different campus that's not necessarily essential to Waterloo/Laurier area. But yes, I don't know much about the internship application process there.
All right. I just see one more question that I think might be interesting for people to know. Does anybody know how to do a study abroad or an international co-op term? Has anybody any experience with that? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Natasha.
Go ahead, Sarah.
No, you can go. Okay, I'll go. I don't have experience myself, but I do know that there's specific co-op advisors for those students. So if it's something you're interested in, I would say get in contact with those people. I think they're not the people that would reach out to you if you have to reach out to them. So check the website, the co-op website, and find out who to get in contact with. And I believe they're like specific to certain areas. So there's like one for whatever region, like in Europe or in Asia or whatever it may be. So yeah, find the person that is of the area of interest to you, get in contact with them, find out how it all works, and then you can go from there.
Awesome. Natasha, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, echoing what Sarah said, you kind of have to get matched with the university abroad in terms of an exchange study term. And if you're going on an exchange study term, you have to make sure that you have enough electives for an entire term to be able to take courses there, unless they match some of your compulsory courses at that university too. And I know some universities are in higher demand than others. So there's one in Singapore that a lot of people in the computer science program tend to want to go to, and they try to rank people based on what I've heard is grades. I'm not sure about like any extracurricular information or such, but that's like kind of what I've heard about international study programs.
All right. So that marks the end of our panel. All of our panelists can be reached at their respective links below. I want to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists tonight. Thank you guys for everything that you've done. We really appreciate it. And if you guys want, you can drop your LinkedIn or any contacts in the chat box below just for people to be able to reach out to you. So thank you guys. And thank you to everybody who was attending as well.